Hello, this is Sonia here with The Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. Today is a Wednesday, and every Wednesday I feature a stitch of the week. So it might be a stitch pattern or an actual stitch. So today we are going to be doing some Tunisian crochet, which I love doing. And for this, you can use a regular crochet hook, a regular straight crochet hook, so you don't need to rush out to the store and buy a whole bunch of Tunisian hooks. And I'm going to be using some worsted weight yarn, or number 4. You can certainly use, especially with this stitch pattern, I think a variety of yarns would really look pretty with this stitch pattern. So this stitch pattern, I actually don't know what it's called. I'm calling it the running chain Tunisian crochet stitch. I don't know if I invented this or not. Probably not. Just like fashion, everything old is new again. I'm sure somebody down the road, a long time ago came up with this, but I actually have not seen this stitch anywhere. And I've been crocheting for at least 26, 27 years now. And I've, done Tunisian during that time, and I've never seen it. So who knows, maybe I came up with a new one. Highly doubt it. So I don't want to, be like, oh, it's my stitch. Some people get really funny like that, and I'm not like that. I just came up with it. I want to share it with you. I think it's really pretty and really unique and not too hard. So if you've never worked Tunisian crochet, I can link some videos below to get you up to speed. It's really, if you know how to do regular crochet, or even if you're a knitter, you should be able to pick it up pretty quickly. Alright, so to do this stitch pattern, you're going to want to work a multiple of 3, chain a multiple of 3, and I recommend chaining at least 9 so that you can really see the full effect of the stitch. I'm going to chain 15, so that's a multiple of 3. Okay, so we have 15, so we're going to work row 1, and row 1 is going to be the setup row. So you're just going to be pulling up loops in the back bump, and you will have a total of 15 loops on your hook, and this always counts as a stitch. And always a nice rule of thumb is just make sure your loop's not like that. You want to have it, fairly close to your hook. I mean, not super tight, but just, close enough so you can, it matches the other guys there. So we're just going to pull up a loop, just like any other routine Tunisian project. A lot of Tunisian stitches, use this as their setup row. And I like doing the back bump because it just looks neater and tidier. I mean, you can certainly work in the chain however you wish. Maybe you hate working in the back bump, but for me with Tunisian, I just think it matches. Like if you were making a complete project out of this, then the bottom would match the top. Okay, so hopefully we have 15 chains. I'm just going to count 1. Yep, 15. And if you're worried about the hump on these hooks, it's fine. I've done so many Tunisian projects like this, and it really just does not affect the look of the project at all. So now we're going to work these stitches off like you would normally do, the normal return pass. So it's called the return pass. So you're going to pull through 1 loop for the first, and then just pull through 2 for the remainder of the row. And then row 2 is going to be the actual stitch pattern, the actual running chain. And you'll see why I call it that. It took me a while to come up with a name, but that's what it always stood out to me, is that it really looked like a running chain throughout, the fabric of, the stitch pattern. And I just think it creates a really nice, pretty fabric. And the nice thing with this one is Tunisian is notorious for curling, and this one is not a curler, so that's a nice thing. Okay, so let's get started on our running chain. Alright, so our first stitch here is going to be Tunisian purl. So if you've never done Tunisian purl, yarn in front. Usually we're used to doing this, but now if you're a knitter, this might not be too foreign for you, but you're going to yarn in front. You're going to work in this bar here. They always count this one as the first, but it's so rare that you work in there. I usually count this one as the first one, but technically it's the second. So this guy here, you're going to work in that bar. And you'll insert your hook. So I have my yarn kind of in between there. And we're going to then yarn over, and it's going to wrap around like a pearl. So if you've knitted, this won't look too unfamiliar. See, you can see that little pearl stitch. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to work in these next two bars here. And this is where the running chain starts to come into play. So you're going to work a Tunisian simple stitch, but with two of them. So it's like you're doing a decrease. So you're going to put your hook in the first bar, or in the next bar, and in the next bar. So you're going to have the two bars like that. You're going to do your yarn over like you're doing a regular Tunisian simple, pull through the two. So now it looks like an upside down V. So you've actually decreased. So we need to actually, we don't want to, you're going to decrease, but we want to always have the same amount of stitches. You always want to have 15 stitches. We started with 15, you always want to have 15. So now we have to put that stitch back on. So what you're going to do is do a yarn over, and you're going to do a yarn over purlwise. So that's like a knitting term. And that, I know some people like yarn over backwards, under. I just think it's easier to just think of it yarn over purlwise. So you're going to have the yarn in front, like you'd be working a purl stitch with Tunisian, and then you're going to just wrap it around like that. And now now you've put your other loop back on. So you decrease, you pop that other loop back on. So you're back on track with the correct amount of stitches. Now we are going to work a purl stitch. So you're always going to have a purl stitch in between your running chain stitch. So now we're back on track with the right amount. So the next stitch is going to be the running chain. So you insert the two loops, Tunisian simple, yarn over, work those two. Now you got to put that loop back on, so purlwise, wrap it around. Now you're going to work your purl stitch. So it's a really easy stitch, and I just think it looks really, really beautiful. And again, it's flat, so it's not a curler. And the reason why is the purl stitches kind of help get rid of that. So we've worked the Tunisian simple with the two, yarn over purlwise, and then work your purl stitch. So as you're looking at this, you can see these two guys here are the Tunisian simple that we worked together or decreased, and then in between, so here's a purl stitch and here's a purl stitch. So that little bump there is the purl. And now we're going to do another, since we have the purl, we're going to do another Tunisian simple stitch decrease. Got to put that other leg back on, so yarn over purlwise, and we have a purl stitch to work. And then what I like to do in my Tunisian, any swatches, whatever, my last stitch is always a Tunisian knit stitch. The reason being is I think it looks a lot neater and nicer, and it matches this guy pretty closely. So I'm working, so you can see it looks like a chain in there. So you just poke your hook in that chain and work the knit stitch. Alright, so that is our forward pass. So we should have 15 loops on here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15. So whatever is the amount you started with on the chain is whatever amount you want on your hook. Alright, so now you just work these guys off like you normally would. So you're going to yarn over, pull through the one, and yarn over, pull through two, all the way across for the return pass. So once you get a couple rows in, then you can really see the running chain. So it might not look like a whole lot at first, but once you get going, then you'll be like, oh, there it is. Okay, so that's our second row, and it's easy to count the rows because on the end it looks like the top of regular crochet stitches, so 1, 2. And that's why we like to knit. Once we get a couple more rows in, you'll see it looks a little bit, you know, as close as it can to this row. All right, so row 3 is the same as row 2. So our first stitch here is a purl. And now it's going to be really easy to do this running chain because you can easily see these 2 loops here. Just slide your hook in those 2, work your Tunisian simple, then put your leg back on, wrap her around purlwise, and then you work a purl stitch. And those 2 guys. I'm actually working on a project using this stitch, so hopefully I'll have it ready. It's going to be part of a series that I have coming up. It's going to be 12 days of warmth, and I'm going to have it leading up to Christmas Eve. So stay tuned for that. Not sure which order it's going to be a scarf, which order it's going to be in. It's not going to be pattern 1, I'll tell you that right now. Okay, so now you can see that chain there. You work your knit stitch in that chain. And row 3, we got to work the return pass. So yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, so you can kind of start the running chain starting to pop out there. So we'll work row 4, so same thing. Purl stitch in the first stitch, and then go through both of those bars and work your Tunisian simple. Got to put the other bar back on, so purlwise, wrap that yarn over purlwise, work your purl, now the reason why we do the yarn over purlwise, because if you did it the regular way, you can't work the purl stitch. It would force you to work a simple, and you don't want to have a simple. You want to have the next stitch to be a purl. So you yarn over purlwise. So in case you were wondering why, that is why. Just like in knitting, you got to yarn over purlwise so that you can, you know, do the correct stitch, and then work your knit stitch at the end, and then work off your loops. So if you know how to do a Tunisian simple and a Tunisian purl stitch, you're good to go with this stitch. You know, you don't need to have tons of experience with Tunisian crochet. If you know those 2 basic stitches, you know, you're set to create, I think, this really beautiful stitch pattern. So I'm going to work a few more rows of this, and then you can really start to see, you know, the running chain there. And see, you can already see she's laying pretty flat, you know, so that's a nice thing also with this stitch. Okay, I will meet you back after I've done a few more rows. Okay, so I actually worked 10 rows of this running chain stitch. So now you can really see the chains popping out. So right here, and you can see, you know, she's laying pretty flat, which is a really nice thing about this stitch. So now you're probably wondering, how on earth do you work these guys off? So really simple. You work them off pretty much how you work off a lot of other single or Tunisian patterns. So what you're going to want to do is, this is our purl stitch, so you're going to work off this stitch purlwise, so the yarn. So pretend you're working your purl stitch, and then just pull through just like that. So these guys are technically Tunisian simple. So you're going to just work that off like a regular Tunisian simple stitch. Next one's purl, so work it off purl. So I think you could use this stitch for a lot of different projects if you're really into Tunisian. Could have a lot of fun with it. Because again, I think it's just a really pretty fabric. It's just really crisp and clean looking, which I tend to like things like that. But I do like my intricate lace as well. So now you're going to work your knit stitch at the end, working that guy off. And you can see all the loops have been worked off. So here we go, we have our Tunisian running chain stitch. So I hope you enjoyed this stitch of the week, and I thank you so much for watching.